Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Just giving Rick a hard time. He wasn't here for our Saturday presser. He took the weekend off, but we got him back. So wanted to give you an update on several things this morning. First, as it relates to Smithfield Foods and the announced closure, indefinite closure of Smithfield Foods. As a lot of you are aware, the governor and I sent a note to the CEO of Smithfield encouraging that they do a minimum 2-week suspension of operations. They've made that decision to close. The company has also decided to compensate their employees for the next 2 weeks, and I want to really send a note of gratitude to them for that. They didn't have to do that. They are doing that. I think that's the right thing to do, so I'm very appreciative of Smithfield taking that approach. I also want to just reinforce that when the Smithfield plant feels that they can open and reopen safely and their employees feel safe returning to work, I'll be the first one to be throwing my hand up in the air and assisting them with that and whatever I can to assist them with that. So I appreciate them taking that approach. It's not good news when you say, oh, they closed. That's good news. It's not good news. It's terrible news. This is all terrible news when this stuff happens. So I had people emailing me and say, hey, that's great news. It's not great news. It's not great news when you have to have your fourth largest employer in the city shutter their doors because of COVID. And I'm married to a hog farmer's daughter, okay? So I get this. I am not making any friends around my in-laws and where they live right now. And I get the ramifications of what this does to pork producers, what this does to the current inventory. Was threatened today that some guy's going to just turn a bunch of hogs loose in the middle of town because they're worthless anyway, and veiled threat, I'm assuming. But there's a lot of emotion on this decision. I get it. I understand that every decision we make has ramifications on people's life and their economy and their health and their finances. And so those aren't taken lightly at all. You know, the window, though, of time for mitigation is certainly dwindling right now. Sioux Falls area has seen a very rapid spike in the last several days, and quite honestly, we're growing increasingly concerned about the need to mitigate that spike before it overwhelms our hospitals. Hospitalizations are low. Yes, they are low. Hospitalizations are a trailing indicator of COVID. Okay, so you don't act once your hospitalizations get high. You don't do things once your hospitalizations are high. When the hospitalizations are high, it's too late. It's too late to do that. So mitigation efforts, they can take 2 to 3 weeks before you see the impact and the ramifications of those efforts. So I want to share a little bit of data, stuff that we're looking at real closely. And this is as of this morning. These are some peer cities that we kind of look at in terms of population, in terms of, some are geographically similar to us, but some are, you got everything from Tallahassee to Laredo, Texas. It's a total number of cases, and this is the cases per 1,000. And Sioux Falls is highlighted in yellow. And this should be concerning to our community. Keeps me up at night right now, this number. We are obviously the highest among all these peer cities, and other than a couple, we're the highest by far, okay? Now, at 218 cases per 1,000 people. I expect once today's numbers are announced, that will increase even more. And so our time to act on this is right now. So on Saturday, I did send a formal request to Governor Noem to issue a shelter in place for Minnehaha and Lincoln counties. I feel that based on this and based on a lot of other data that we have, the time to act is now. I want to show you one other chart on why I think this is important right now. Now let's see if I can get this slid over here. So what you're seeing here is the doubling rate, okay, the doubling rate of cases. And if we continue on the same path we're on, okay, our doubling rate is going to be there in a week. Okay, okay, in the number of cases. If we just take the average doubling rate of all those peer cities I just showed you, we'll be here. But we are by far outperforming in a bad way our peer cities. So if we continue the trend that we've been on the last 4, 5, 6 days, we are going to be up here very shortly. This is a crippling number to our healthcare systems, okay? This is very bad. It's a very bad outlook. That is why a shelter-in-place order is needed now. It's needed today. Now, do I feel that we've done a lot in our city already with proclamation, with the governor's EO of 65 and over shelter in place, with our ordinances to close down or limit the patronage of certain businesses? Absolutely. But can we do more? Yes. Would a shelter-in-place order do more? Yes. If the governor and the state does not do that at the county level, we're going to consider doing it at the city level. I say consider. Honestly, it's a 7-day window for us to do that, to notice that and have 2 readings. 7 days. Today's the 14th. 7 days will put us to the 21st. Okay? Quite honestly, it's crap that we have to wait that long to act. That's what the legislature decided on veto day, and so that's the law we have to live within. So we're really asking for the help of the state to take more swift action because our nimbleness was stripped from us in order to act on a local level. We're asking for that shelter in place for 3 weeks. I do have the support and the endorsement of Vera on this. They feel the time is now to do this. We're unified in our incident command center that we need to do this now. And so I'm hoping that this is just viewed as a logical extension of the April 6th executive order, which was 65 and over. I want to extend that to the entire city. What does a shelter in place means? It basically, it limits people's movements outside of their home unless they need to leave for essential activities and work. Essential meaning outdoor activities you could still do. You could still get groceries, okay? You could still get gas. But it limits a lot of those other non-essential activities. So caring for others obviously is important. Obtaining necessary services. And there's a whole list and a criteria of what those all include. That would be included if and when this shelter-in-place order gets enacted. So we've also made a request to set up an isolation center in Sioux Falls. We need the state to work on an isolation center in the city to isolate the people who have either tested positive or those who have come into contact with those who have tested positive. At one point, I believe the state epidemiologist said average of 10 contacts per case. Well, if you have 700 cases, that's 7,000 people that need to be in isolation or in quarantine. That's a substantial number of people. And so we need that isolation center to get moving very quickly here in Sioux Falls, and we stand ready to help stand that up and to work with the state, the guard, whoever, to get that up and running. So before I turn it over to, I believe, to Janet Kittams with the Helpline Center, I want to say one last thing. We know, the governor reinforces this a lot too, we know we are not going to stop COVID. We're not going to stop this number. This will happen. What I want is this number way over here, okay, into May, and not a week from now. So we're focused on slowing it down. That is the goal with COVID, is to slow it down. This is not a slowdown, okay? This is not a slowdown. And so while we can do things at a city level and a state level, I need to continue to reinforce to our community the seriousness of the situation. And if the Smithfield situation doesn't reinforce the seriousness of this, I don't know what will. But when you have the 3rd largest pork producer in the country saying, we need to close our doors because of the safety of our employees and the safety of this community, and them realizing that, you should all realize that as well. That you need to stay home, you need to practice good social hygiene. If you have to go out, you need to respect people's distance, you need to stay away from people. It's so important right now. I cannot overstate it. You all play a role in this effort right now. I'm going to keep doing all I can. I need you to keep doing all you can. And that is how we will stop the spread, I should say, slow the spread of COVID. So I've asked Janet Kittams to join us as well. She's going to give us an update on some things that are important to know right now from the Helpline Center and what they're seeing there. So, Janet?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Janet Kittams. I'm the CEO of the Helpline Center. I just wanted to give everybody an update on the phone calls that we've been continuing to receive at the Helpline Center. So in the month of March, we received 9,185 phone calls that were related to the COVID-19 outbreak pandemic. Those calls continue to come in, and probably to date, we received over 11,400. The types of phone calls that we're receiving have changed slightly over the past 5 weeks. Initially, we received a lot of phone calls about symptoms and information about the illness or the disease, and we still are receiving some calls about that, but we're receiving far more phone calls about the need for resources and assistance. Families are struggling out there. We have a lot of people that are out of work, have been displaced, and people are looking for financial assistance to help pay rent. They're looking for food to feed their families. And we're also continuing to hear from people who are struggling with mental health issues, anxiety, depression, and just a lot of fear surrounding what's happening in our communities. So in response to the food calls that we've had, I wanted to kind of paint a little bit different picture, or better picture of that, I should say. So we classify all of our calls, the needs that come in on those phone calls, and during the month of March, we had 2,289 needs for food assistance. To put that in perspective, in the entire year of 2019, we had 4,633 requests for food or assistance. So just in the span of 1 month, we certainly have almost seen half of what we see in an entire year. So clearly there's a high demand and need for food in our community. So a partnership has been formed for a centralized food distribution that I want to talk about this morning. So the partnership includes a collaborative amongst several agencies. Those include Feeding South Dakota, the Helpline Center, Faith Temple Food Giveaway, Corona Help Sioux Falls, and the Salvation Army. We will be starting a centralized food distribution that will happen every Tuesday and Thursday from noon until 8 at the W.H. Lyon Fairgrounds. People are asked to pre-register for this, and they can do that by going to the Helpline Center's website, helplineCenter.org/foodsf, or they can also dial 211. This will be a supplemental food box for families to receive, and they can receive one of those food boxes every other week after they register through the Helpline Center. It is our hope that we have such a high need for food and such a limited resource of the food that if we combine forces and make a centralized food distribution, that we can serve more people through that. Thank you.
So is that open tomorrow? You said Tuesday, what time?
Correct. Yes, we are starting tomorrow at noon, and it will run to 8 this Tuesday and this Thursday, and every week until we see the need that we still need to continue.
Start going online?
We do expect a tremendous response to that, just based upon the number of phone calls that we've seen at the Helpline Center so far for food. I'll turn it back over to the mayor.
All right, we'll take any questions you might have for me this morning.
Yes. What readers and residents have asked, for a shelter in place sooner. What gives you the flexibility now to make that request?
Well, the reason I'm making the request now is the governor placed an executive order that put a shelter-in-place order on our counties. So that was the first county-wide kind of directive out of Pierre. So that now tells us, all right, the state is willing to take action on a county-by-county level. And so that kind of opened the jar for us to say, okay, now that you've done this, can you take it another step further based on what we're seeing? So that's why we feel comfortable making that request. I don't know if the state's there yet. Like I said, I did speak with the governor about it on Saturday, and we'll see. My hope is that they will, this has always been a locally executed kind of strategy, and we're asking for this as the leader of, again, Sioux Falls. Not Minnehaha and Lincoln County, but the governor has taken county level action, so we feel that we're hoping that she'll take county level action in this regard as well.
This is for 3 weeks if it's approved, correct?
Yeah, the question is for 3 weeks? Yes, that's what we would be asking for, is for 3 weeks. Now, my statement is this: can people shelter in place for 2 months, 3 months? No, probably not. Not in summer, okay? But we can turn the dials, okay? We can say, we need a shelter in place now to kind of flatten this. And then we can lift it off a little bit, but then we might have to put it in place we're going to have to play with some dials here to control the spread, okay? And that's how this will work. There's no way I can put a shelter in place through the end of July. There's no way. People won't abide by it. I get that. But I think I can, based on strong messaging and enforcement, say, can you do this for 3 or 4 weeks just to flatten that line out a little bit?
Can you clarify what this, if it's approved, what this would mean for businesses that are currently open or things like daycares for families?
Yeah, the question is, can you clarify what this means for businesses and so forth? We'll provide more information on that as we have it. My attorney's here. We're working on the details of that. The clarification would come from the state. If it would come down from the state. Again, if it doesn't come from there, we can do it on a city level. Then we control what that would mean. It'd be a first reading, second reading, noticed kind of issue. But again, that's only the 80 square miles of Sioux Falls and not right around our municipality.
How soon do you anticipate hearing a response from the state?
How soon do I anticipate hearing a response from the state? I hope soon. This is moving quickly. This is just a fluid situation. And I'll tell you, at noon today, I'm expecting higher count numbers again. In fact, we could be in for a record count day of new cases. So I think we all need to be prepared for that. And that's what tells us right now the time to act is now. We need to go.
Just curious, with Smithfield, were the cases still coming in when the initial three-day shutdown occurred, and then the spike just went as those cases kept coming in?
Yeah. The question is, were the cases from Smithfield coming in when we requested the 3-day? Yes. Do they continue to come in? Yes. Yesterday, the counts were more, I forget how many, 50, 60 Smithfield cases. Today, I'm expecting probably a similar number of Smithfield employee cases. So this goes to tell you that the efforts, the mitigation efforts and things, you don't see the results of those for 2 or 3 weeks. So we'll see Smithfield cases decline 2 or 3 weeks from now because of the measures they're taking now. That's also why we need to do shelter in place and some of these other things now, so that 2 or 3 weeks from now, we see the fruits of that labor.
How do you support businesses? I mean, is takeout okay, or delivery, or?
Yeah, how do you support businesses is the question, in the same way you've been doing it all along. You order takeout from restaurants, you still are gonna, would want to get your essential services, you're still gonna frequent stores, but instead of 2 or 3 times a week, you're gonna go once and you're gonna have a bigger bill, and you're still gonna support business any way you can. Again, as a former entrepreneur and business owner, I understand what this is doing to our business community. It breaks my heart in the emails I get every weekend, every day, every night. I dread waking up in the morning because my inbox is full of people ticked off at what I am doing to their business. I am not the enemy. The governor is not the enemy. The president is not the enemy. COVID is the enemy. None of us created this, but we're all figuring out how to deal with it, okay? And we're dealing with it in the best way we can, given the tools we have. So we have a shared enemy, and it's the virus. It's not elected officials. It's not Smithfield employees. It's not a company like Smithfield. They're not the enemy. It's the virus.
Can you explain, if this shelter in place is approved, how it would be enforceable?
That again, if the state decides to do that, they would be in charge of the enforcement. So we would work with them, and likely law enforcement or National Guard, or there'd be different ways that the enforcement could take place. So it will depend on what the state would like to see there. Okay, thank you for being here today. Appreciate it. Thanks, Rick.